All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to That's Not Real Trek Watch Party Podcast. This is episode number 28, and we're starting season 3 of Lower Decks. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC. Directly below me, the beautiful copper haired, short and sweet, that is still very bright and radiant. You
Yes.
might as well be wearing the sun on your head, but it looks good.
Thank you.
I just jest. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. A little sore, but I'm good.
Yeah.
Um, so we finished up season 2 last week, and it ended on the cliffhanger of Captain Freeman being arrested by Starfleet Command. Did you have any further thoughts on the last couple of episodes there?
I think it'll be curious to see whether they wrap that up quickly or they take their time with it.
Right.
Because a lot of times, like when I can't remember his name, um, Shax, when he died,
Mhm.
it was like resolved immediately,
Right.
and then we just moved on. So it'll be interesting to see, how they resolve it, first of all, and then second of all, how much time they spend on this. And
Right.
I imagine that
I
that's going to be answered quickly.
yeah, I'm leaning towards that as well. It's probably going to be like at the very least within the first 2 episodes, especially since they only have 10 episodes per season and how fast paced it is. Maybe even
Yeah.
within just the first episode, you
Yeah.
know, they're going to answer that and say, "Oh, it's this," and maybe talk about it a little bit more and then move on, like you said. And I think actually we had 1 or 2 episodes at the beginning of season 2 that Shax wasn't in,
Hmm.
and then it was, I think, the third episode he came in, and you're like, wait, isn't he dead? And then they're like, yeah, he was dead and he came back to life, and we're not going to talk about it, you know.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you why.
Yeah. um so I found that a little curious, and I wonder if it was because the actor either wasn't uh contracted to do the so many episodes, and that's how they wrote it into the story, or they did that on purpose, and just so people like me and maybe you would have done the exact same thing that I just did, which is, why the fuck wasn't he in if he's alive, what happened? Um it was just an interesting way for that to play out, that he wasn't in those 2 episodes, if I'm remembering that correctly, and then
Yeah.
suddenly he appears and nobody knows what the fuck is going on. But yeah, so yeah, it's interesting you thought of that, and I agree that they're probably going to wrap that up pretty quickly instead of maybe dwelling on it for a while. It could possibly also go the other way, which is, 3, 4, 5 episodes were deep into a more comprehensive storyline about the crew getting Captain Freeman off the hook.
Hmm.
Uh, but we'll see. So,
Yeah.
all right. So this is the final season of Lower Decks that's out right now. I think we figured out that the fourth season is coming out in either August or September.
Hmm.
So at some point we will be revisiting it to grab the latest season, but probably, I want to say, probably not until next year. Um,
Yeah.
but in the meantime, this is the current season that's out, and season 3 will start with the first 4 episodes. Uh, episode 1, Grounded, and 2, The Least Dangerous Game. There we go. So, yeah, they read that up pretty quick,
Yeah.
like we said.
First episode. Just done.
Yeah. Um, but at least they're like attempting to fill the niche or the stereotype, of ending a season on a cliffhanger and then coming back and resolving it.
Yeah, that's very true. It's not uncommon for it to be resolved in the first episode or two
Right.
when they do that. So,
Yeah. I seem to recall there was a DS9. I we had many two-part episodes in the original series in TNG, and then when DS9 came on the scene, I remember it was like, at least back in the 90s when I was, following it live per se, it seemed really weird to have a three-part episode.
yeah.
And DS9 was the first to do that, so I suppose in that regard, yeah, that's probably what you would expect. But I mean, ongoing ramifications from that,
Yeah.
uh, so maybe that's more of like a nod to the episodic nature of TOS and TNG. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that was interesting. So, what'd you think of the resolution there to Captain Freeman's incarceration and being on trial?
I mean, I think that it would have been a little more interesting to have it play throughout a little bit further through the
Hmm.
season. But with this being kind of like the less serious installment of Star Trek, then it makes sense that they're gonna want to just like resolve it quickly and move on.
Well, especially if they're, continuing this pattern of trying to cram as many references into everything as they possibly can.
Hmm.
So like in the second episode we saw there, we've got J.G. Hertzler reprising his role as General Martok, but it's not actually Martok. It's this Ferengi program that you're kind of like just going off of prompts and whatever else.
Yeah, it's like D&D, but like
Yeah,
also has like expansion packs. I don't
yeah,
like microtransactions.
yep. Just need a couple of bars of gold pressed latinum to get the next part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, uh, the first episode there, I thought it was really interesting that the way they kind of wrap that whole scenario up. Like the main message or moral of the story was that you look multiple times in Trek history to the honorable people in Starfleet because they are Starfleet officers doing the right thing time and time again, which isn't always the truth, but
Hmm.
they kept saying trust the system, trust, which hell, if we can do that now, you know
Yeah, right.
maybe in Star Trek Utopia, you know but
Yeah.
the they were essentially seeming to build that up into a storyline where you didn't know what it was going to be that resolved the issue until the last minute when they came in and they said, "Oh yeah, you were trying to, steal the Cerritos and go on this daring mission to try to save your captain," which we've seen in multiple instances. Hell, even Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 3, the search for Spock, where they literally steal the Enterprise out of space dock and
Hmm.
go to save Spock. Um, those sorts of scenarios. And no, that's not what it was at all. In fact, you failed horribly, Mariner, to save your mom. And the thing that saved her was an investigation that was going on that we didn't even know it was happening.
Right.
Yeah. And also, I gotta say now, I'm glad that it seems like they brought the Pakled storyline to an end, and yeah, because there's only so much you could do with the stupidity of the Pakleds. Um, but I don't know if you noticed this in the opening credits scene. Did you notice that the crystalline entity is in the battle with the Pakleds and the Borg and the Romulans now?
Ah, I did not.
Because we spoke multiple times about the crystalline entity or entities in the season 2 finale, and yeah, so they now if you watch the opening credits, see it just like in season 1 it was the Borg and the Romulans. Then in
Hmm.
season 2 they added the Pakleds, and now they've added the crystalline entity into that scene.
I like that.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, and all in all, I mean, that seemed to be just as good a resolution as any, but very short. Like
Hmm.
you said, I also I agree. I would have liked to seen that maybe drawn out, and maybe make the season 3 uh opening like the first 2 episodes entirely. You could make the instead of just ending it on a cliffhanger and resolving in the first episode, you have a two-parter, episode 1 and 2, that they take that much longer to resolve the scenario.
Hmm.
And in the second episode they didn't talk about it at all.
Yeah,
So
captain's back on the ship.
yeah,
Everything's back to normal.
we're all back to
Uh,
normal again.
or
Yeah.
as normal as that ship is.
Yeah. Um so that was interesting. But much better than any of that was James Cromwell
Yes.
coming back as oh, what's his name? Zephram
Zephram
Cochrane. Yeah,
Cochrane.
I'm
Yeah.
terrible with names. Um, and a couple of different things in First Contact. There's the part where Riker and Geordi are standing with Zephram Cochrane, or maybe it's just Geordi, and he's telling him about the statue that
Hmm.
is in the future. He's like, "Oh, I wish I had a camera because you're standing right where your statue is." So now we actually get to see the statue
See
in
the
this
statue.
episode,
Yeah.
and it's
And
in
the
the middle
bar,
of
they're
a
like, oh, this bar that only plays one
yeah,
song.
which I think oh, what's the name of it? It's I know it's by Roy Orbison. Ooby
Oh,
Dooby.
Ooby Dooby. Yep.
Ooby Dooby by Roy Orbison. That's the only song that plays in that bar.
Yeah.
And
I thought they were gonna play that, and I was like, oh man, they probably didn't get the rights or whatever to it. But then they played Steppenwolf, and I was like, yes, that
right,
was even
yeah.
better.
Which that's a classic now. The
Yeah.
only Star Trek anything that has a classic rock in it. Um,
Hmm.
unless they, I mean, how many times did we see that they would go back to classical music like Mozart, Beethoven, and all
Yeah.
this stuff. You know, we've never heard of pop rock in
Yeah.
the Star Trek universe, so we're going back to Mozart.
Well,
Um,
except for Enterprise's theme song, but that's like
yeah, uh, how many people think that's a travesty? You know.
right.
So yeah, that was very cool. All the references to First Contact there, and a nice layout for this essentially touristy theme park that exists in Bozeman, Montana now, and riding the Phoenix as just like this almost like a child's thrill ride. Um, what did he say? You only have to be 100 centimeters
Yeah.
to be. Yeah.
But it's a
So
real ship. It really worked. Their little plan as far as that
right,
went actually worked, and they had their little hostage guy that they just
right.
left out there
I
by
know.
himself.
Oh, he was
Uh,
fine. He
yeah,
knew
yeah.
where he was going.
It's totally fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was a really nice way for this series that has been completely full of references the whole time to build into the storyline First Contact and
Yeah.
Star Trek 3 and all of these other things that we've been seeing. So not only are they jam packing in the references, but it looks like they're trying to hit all of the bases,
Hmm.
across the entire Star Trek universe.
Mhm.
Um, Now the second episode to me seemed kind of more like, okay, we've wrapped all that up. Now we're going to go on to something completely different, and they split that into like three different storylines there, and we were following each after a bit. Did you have any thoughts on how that episode was portrayed?
Oh, I mean, I thought it was cool that like with their what's the planet they were? I don't know the name of the planet they were on, but
Yeah,
they said that we're wearing the wrong clothes and at the wrong time or whatever in the wrong place, and I thought that was like a very clever reference to that TNG episode where they're down on a planet and Wesley steps
yeah,
onto the grass or something and they're like gonna kill him for it.
yeah. Oh my God, you
So,
destroyed
yeah.
flowers.
Oh God.
Here, let's give you some poison, and thank you for
Right. Like,
visiting our
oh,
planet.
that's it. You're dead.
Right.
So I thought
Justice.
that was yeah, justice. That was it. I thought that was like a clever way to like make that reference without like outright, directly copying that same thing. And then, there was a lot going on. It was
Yeah,
kind of
it
like
jumped back and forth a lot. Um, the hunt portion
mhm,
of that with Boimler reminded me of Predator, the whole
yeah.
Predator movie series,
Hmm.
and interesting how that kind of ended. I mean, I figured
Yeah.
it was going to end in some fashion like that, where
Catch and release.
he
That was
catches
pretty
him, but he's
clever.
just not going to kill him.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
like, oh, just pictures from
Selfie, yeah.
memories.
Could you imagine Predator just, catching an alien or something like, oh, I just need a selfie.
Got you.
The mask comes off and the little fangs, ah. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so yeah, there was a lot. I think I was disappointed in that episode because of how it kind of like branched into, and it was complex. It was almost difficult to follow what was going on at that specific time.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just it wasn't bad. I just wouldn't necessarily rate that episode very well, I don't think.
Yeah.
And the only other thing that oh, the I mentioned it in chat, Ketracel White Hot Sauce.
Oh yeah.
Ketracel White is the drug in DS9 that the founders used to keep the Jem'Hadar under their control.
Ah, okay.
So that to me was a nice, hilarious little reference there because what else are you gonna make hot sauce out of than this addictive cocaine-like
Drugs.
drug, you know?
Yeah.
And you see Boimler after he put some of that on there, and he's just passed out. His face is all red and everything. That was great. And a reference to Star Trek 2009, J.J. Abrams movie with the skydiving suits. And
Yeah.
instead of the drill that they're diving down next to, it's this elevator coming up from this planet. So I thought that was a nice little way to put that in.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on those two episodes before we move on?
No, that's about
Okay.
it.
All right, plugging right along. Here we go with episode 3, Mining the Mines. Here, let me do this very slowly so I get it right. M-
Okay.
Mining the Mines. Mines.
Okay.
Like mining, digging,
Uh-huh.
the mines,
The mines. Mines.
mines. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And episode 4, Room for Growth. All right. Here we go. Well, I want churros now. Uh,
Yeah. I was like, oh, it just is making me hungry.
yeah. Um. So yeah, it seemed like we had some kind of like run of the mill moving the story along. You know,
Yeah.
nothing too sacred, nothing
Nothing
too big.
crazy.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Susan Gibney from TNG reprising her role as Leah Brahms. That was a nice little treat there.
Yeah, I'm curious as to how they decide on like who they're going to write in, and like if they decide who they want and then see if they can get them, or if they see who they can get and then write that into the story. I'm
Y-
curious as how that's working on the back end.
Yeah, I'd be apt to think it's the latter, simply
Hmm.
because it's been a weird mishmash of. I mean, we've had some of the top stars, Jonathan Frakes, John Delancey, um, and people that it's almost like the role has been enshrined in Star Trek history as something that would always be remembered if you had seen it once.
Hmm.
Leah Brahms, I mean, she it wasn't a big name star, but if you've ever seen TNG, you know Leah Brahms.
Hmm.
Um, so maybe that's a little bit of the guiding factor is this a person that you would know if you just only maybe passively watch Star Trek in your time, or you know
Yeah.
depending on the fan service aspect of it or something like that. I don't know, but
Hmm.
I would be apt to believe that, like, they put the call out, and okay, this person responded, hey, and I got to imagine that some of the actors that have had Star Trek in their past don't want to revisit that character, you know so they'll reach
Yeah,
out to
possibly.
somebody and say, hey, would you be interested in this, and they're maybe like, no, that was a
Hmm.
different part of my life and I want to move on or something.
Yeah.
um but yeah, an interesting cast that they have assembled for those guest star roles.
Hmm.
So the the interesting thing about Leah Brahms is that she appeared essentially with that first TNG episode. I can't remember the name of it, but as a holodeck character that Geordi grew to love,
Hmm.
or at least have an extreme affection for. And then we saw a later episode where she actually shows up on the ship, the real Leah Brahms, and he
Makes an ass
Geordi.
of himself.
Yeah, well, Geordi, I mean, he's such a. I don't want to say. I mean, he is. He's a kind person. It's not. That's not the thing that I'm looking for here. He's almost kind of like the lovesick. Yeah, damn, the words escape me. But you know what I'm talking about. He's got that type of personality.
Yeah.
Um,
Hopeless romantic.
Hopeless romantic, but also in ineptitude in love,
Hmm.
and some other things. Um, but when that episode came about, it became very clear that was part of the controversy of the episode, was that she found out about this program, and it's just like,
Hmm.
I mean, imitation is the highest form of flattery. You're telling me, man, they skirted around it. I don't know how many times until the Barkley episode.
Yeah.
You're telling me that nobody is going to be using the holodeck for sex?
Right.
Seriously? you know,
Come on.
Come on now. But yeah, the irony of that episode, though, was if you had seen the original series episode with the salt sucking creature, um, that changed forms, and there was some a little bit of risque converse dialogue in that episode where the ensign goes, "Well, you look just like this woman that I know from Wrigley's Pleasure Planet." And they're like, "Ensign, what the fuck is wrong with you?" And he's just like, "I'm sorry, but there was this whore there that I just got with, and she looks just like her." So I thought that was a really cool way to incorporate an oddball episode like that,
Hmm.
where uh, that's not where the storyline ended up, but that's what it's very much started with.
Hmm.
The concept that and it's probably been a couple more times in Star Trek history where they visited something like that. Don't think, or hell, Ghostbusters even, where they're, yeah, don't think about anything. Don't, your fantasy, your horror, or anything like that, because it's gonna come to life. And yeah, that was an interesting way to incorporate that. What were
Yeah.
your thoughts on how that all played out?
Yeah, it was definitely a unique story, in that, we haven't seen something like that, I don't think, for these like little, pieces of rock can bring that. It was just very chaotic too. Once
Yeah,
once they broke open, and like there's these clowns with batleth arms, and there's a Borg snake, and it was just like,
just pure chaos there for a good couple
yeah,
of
it's like
minutes.
just starts out so simple and then becomes just like this whole huge thing. So I like the chaotic nature of the show.
Yeah. Well, and with scenarios like that, just like the episodes where we go into the holodeck and wear old timey costumes or something, um, there's so many different elements that they can put in that are just completely off the wall, completely unrelated to what's actually happening in the universe,
Hmm.
and have fun with it.
Yeah.
Like I'm already recalling the Strange New Worlds episode with the Doctor and the uh, costumes that they were wearing that were kind of like medieval. And
Yeah.
yeah, we see quite a few of those episodes here and there, and it adds a lot of
Hmm.
distinctive flavor too. It's all just fun.
Yeah.
There's an episode of Voyager that actually takes place outside of canon, because the entire episode is a holodeck uh fantasy in Tom Paris's mad scientist world, or whatever it was that
Oh
they
yeah, the
created.
Chaotica or whatever.
Chaotica, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the entire, I think the entire or overwhelming majority of the episode actually, like, because I've spent some time working on Star Trek canon history and the timeline where all the episodes and the novels and the comic books and all that falls. And there was some serious notage in there about how that episode just didn't work on any level fitting in the Star Trek canon. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, we still see a couple of those episodes here and there where they step
Hmm.
outside and go into some kind of fantasy world, or Q shows up and whisks them away to fight these dog faced guys with bayonets, and who
Right. Or they're
knows.
in Robin Hood.
Robin Hood, yeah. So, and I'm sure we'll see some more of it now in
I
this.
That's what I thought they were going with, when they did the black and white, and
Yeah,
they were in the holodeck. I thought they were doing like a Dixon Hill
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Clearly, that had to be like a tribute to that part of it, either
Yeah.
Chaotica or Dixon Hill.
Hmm.
Um, Interesting that we find out now in this episode that Shaxis and Dr. Tana are
Yeah.
having a relationship, and it's apparently one fraught with a lot of we need to be in the throes of death before we get turned on enough to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, yikes. And then I love that they do the like I don't know, kind of like a tongue-in-cheek joke, like at the audience too. And he's like, "Well, I died. And we haven't even talked about it." It's just like, oh
and
yeah, in the
and
show.
and the gender role reversal there.
Uh-huh.
Shaxs being this really intense, angry, giant man, and he's the
Yeah.
one going, "We never talk about my feelings." And, yeah,
There's always time for feelings.
yeah. So yeah, that was interesting.
Mhm.
Also made me think of in First Contact with Picard, who sets up one of the Dixon Hill programs
Mm,
just so the Borg would enter the holodeck and he can shoot them with the Tommy gun.
right. Well,
This
yeah. What was it, like a casino or something
yeah,
that
a
he?
casino
Yeah.
scene and disabling the safety protocols, just so that added level of danger is there. Yeah, who in their right mind would disable the safety protocols?
You know.
You know, like what were you thinking? Um, So yeah, that and then the second episode seemed to be more like, yeah, they were focusing so much on this beta versus delta shift
Hmm.
type thing, um, that and granted we had two storylines going on there with Captain Freeman and the engineering crew basically, trying to go to the spa and relax. Um, but the beta versus delta shift thing, it seemed like to me that that was almost like this college paradigm where you've got rival houses,
Hmm.
what are they got, fraternities,
Yeah, frat. Yeah.
and these two groups of people that each are trying to be the best, and they never quite measure up because there's nobody's really the best, and
Right.
and it just turns into infighting. Um,
Hmm.
so what went across your mind when it came to that episode?
Oh, it reminded me of my days of working like in the restaurant industry where it was like,
Really?
oh, the morning shift comes in and they're like bitching about the night before, the evening, the closing shift didn't do this, and then the closing shift comes in and they're like, the morning shift didn't do that. They're just at each other's throat all the time. And then they find that little like nice little thing that they can bond about for a second, and then,
Right.
and then we're back to
Right back to
hating
each
each
other's
other
throats.
again.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Now that you say that, that does make a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, because you hear that all of the time.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, morning shift is always constantly bitching about night shift not doing their job or finishing their job or leaving dishes or some other shit. And yeah, and night shift is just like, dude, it's fucking night shift. I don't care. Yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, all in all, not too bad. Um,
Yeah, and it was a nice way to introduce some new characters too. Like, we've got these set characters that we've been seeing. You don't see the command crew as often, and now we've got some more. I mean, in theory, I'm guessing these are more lower decks, just that work on different shifts. So,
right.
few new characters. Maybe they're thrown out there to see what sticks. If anybody, if anybody really gravitates towards some of them, maybe they'll bring them back. But
Yeah, possibly. Um, much like Reginald Barclay was.
mhm.
We only saw him a few times, and then he'd pop in here and there, and then he ends up showing up on other series too.
Mhm.
You know, uh, you you sometimes see some of these recurring characters, but they only play minor roles in this and that, and then you see it in some place maybe you didn't expect, like Thomas Riker
Mhm.
showing up on DS9.
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting. So yeah, maybe we'll see some of these Delta Shift characters again, and something like that. The only other thing I had for that was the woman who was running the spa. Um, we've seen her species. I don't know the name of the species, but we've seen it one other time, and that was in the animated series from the
Um,
70s. Uh, they could not get what's his name that played Chekhov.
oh, Walter Koenig.
Yeah, Walter Koenig. They could not get Walter Koenig signed for that show.
Hmm.
So Chekhov didn't appear there, and instead there was a Lieutenant Arex, which was that species that has three arms.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was, I mean, obviously this isn't the first time they did that, but revisiting species that we'd never seen before. Even Dr. Tana, the chief medical officer, is a cat, a feline species that also showed up on the animated series and we've never seen anywhere else. So um, that part of it I really, really enjoy. That
Yeah.
they have identified some of these species and characters that you only saw once, or was a thing that was never more fully explored in other series or episodes, and but we'll insert them here because we do know that they're a part of the universe, you know um and they've got some kind of reference point now other than just that one single episode. I'm waiting for a Horta to appear at some point here, because we
You
only
never
saw
know.
that. And I recall reading one novel. I couldn't say what it was, one of the novels way back when, that actually featured a Horta as an Enterprise crew member under Kirk after the
Hmm.
whole incident of Devil in the Dark. um so those kinds of things are really cool and interesting to me, to see them build upon those elements of Star Trek history that were never more fully explored.
Yeah.
So, all right, anything else that I haven't touched upon here?
No, I don't think.
No. Okay. All right, so then next week we're looking at season 3, episodes 5 through 8, and we'll
Ooh.
almost be done.
Yeah.
I
Holy
told you,
cow.
I told you they would fly by, man.
Yeah, it goes really fast.
Yeah. So we've got 6 more episodes in Lower Decks, at least
Mhm.
for right now. Prodigy has 20 episodes, and the same thing. They're all 25-minute episodes, so that'll be 5 weeks. Well, distributed a little bit weird. So next week is season 3, episode 5 through 8, then 9 and 10 in the following week. Plus, we'll start Prodigy.
Okay.
So it'll be offset a little bit, and then I've got some stuff at the end of Prodigy before we start diving into Picard. Um,
Nice.
it's some relevant, interesting things.
Hmm.
But yeah, yeah. Before you know it, we'll finally be in the Picard. Have you
Yay!
seen? You saw season 1 of that? You said
I haven't seen any of it, but I saw a
none.
spoiler. I've seen none of it, but I saw a spoiler,
Uh
and I
oh.
was like so mad that I saw it.
Oh
And I
boy.
won't say what it was. I won't say what it was, but it was something about it was like a meme and it was like season 1, season 2, and then it said like season 3 and then showed somebody and I was just like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. Oh, I bet I know what you're thinking of. So,
Uh-huh.
here, I'll just say this about Picard because clearly we're still several weeks out from it. I'll just
Mhm.
say this about Picard. Just like in their own fashion, the creators did here with Lower Decks, with building in all the references, the Easter eggs, and in particular the fan service that you would expect. Like, when they came out with um, Fuller House
Mhm.
or the Connors, this sort of thing. I at some point I fully expected them to bring back Friends,
Yeah.
in something else. um that type of fan service where they're taking this thing that was immensely popular with a specific group and then saying, okay, now we're going to create this other thing over here that recaptures that spirit. I mean, hell,
Hmm.
Lorne Michaels has had the career that he has because he built on that sort of fan service.
Yeah.
Uh, the same way that I would expect at some point the Big Bang Theory is going to have some kind of thing, some
Hmm.
kind of reunion or whatever they're going to do.
Yeah.
Um, Now, Picard not only has incorporated that, so you can expect to see all of the things that you would hope to see,
Hmm.
but they have also um, done this style of writing that satisfied Patrick Stewart's desire to not specifically revisit Jean-Luc Picard as he appeared in TNG in the movies. Because there was a couple of interviews and he said, "Yeah, I don't have it. I think that what I did there in that time period satisfied my soul to the end of that character."
Hmm.
So he turned down several things over the next 20 years
Hmm.
of them saying, coming to him and saying, "Hey, would you like to do this? Would you like to do that?" And he'd say no.
Hmm.
And then finally they approached him and they said, "Hey, we've got this idea for this character, and here's what it is." And he finally said yes.
Yeah.
So that was 3 years ago. And
Hmm.
now that has turned into this other thing where, yes, they've done that fan service, but it also, in many ways, is completely and wholly different from anything TNG could ever be.
Hmm.
So here's what I'll tell you that's a little bit of a spoiler about Picard, but I don't think it's a big spoiler. In uh it was either between season 1 and 2 or season 2 and 3. Patrick Stewart went on The View and asked Whoopi Goldberg to reprise her role as Guinan.
Hmm.
And she said yes. And they made it this big media thing that he went on the show to talk about Picard and talk about his life and everything that's going on now
Hmm.
in his old age, and ask her to come on the show as
Yeah.
a and reprise her role, and she said yes. And apparently, I don't know if this was the plan from the beginning, but apparently this was like a big part of how the show developed into season 3 in particular, was them saying, how can we fully develop this fan service and make
Okay.
it the thing, and then finally that announcement that came that season 3 would be the final season.
Hmm.
So I just got barely started on season 2 when we started this, what, eight,
Hmm.
8 months ago now, 8 9 months,
Yeah.
and I didn't touch it since. So that will be all new for me as well. I did see
Nice.
season 1, and I thought it was in many ways fantastic. There's a few things that I thought were kind of cheesy, but
Yeah.
overall it was very well done. So I think you will be very happy and satisfied watching that. So
I'm sure I will.
yeah. So all right. Well, yep, we're plugging along, so we'll get to it, and uh, almost done with Lower Decks now. So
Wow.
yeah, I know, right? Time flies when you're having fun.
Hmm.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Adios.